Support the Amigos podcast and keep the Amiga goodness flowing for just $1 a month. Visit our page at patreon.com/AmigosPodcast.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Amigos, the podcast about everything Amiga. Amigos is a proud member of the Throwback Network, your home for quality retro podcasts. And now, here are your hosts, Aaron Dowdy and John Bodovkar Schaller. Hi everybody, welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we're going to talk about the Star Wars trilogy of games on the Amiga. That would be not the first trilogy, but the second trilogy.
The original trilogy.
The original
The
trilogy.
only good trilogy.
I get confused about the way
I
we're
don't.
supposed to talk about these things.
I don't get confused at all. There's the original trilogy, and then there's a bunch of garbage that ruined the series for me later. Thank God, this is one of the good things about the Amiga not making more games.
That's true.
I don't have to sit through a bunch of pod races.
Jar
for the
Jar
Amiga.
Simulator.
No.
But before we get into it, we got some feedback from last week from our man Gary Hucker.
The Huck.
Yeah.
The Huckster.
He said, just wanted to say congratulations on your 100th episode. I really enjoyed it, as with all your episodes. I've been a little quiet on YouTube and the website front because things have been very hectic lately. Things are starting to get back to normal, so I hope to have more content soon. I started a video on booting from the zip drive on my A500, but I had some issues and put it aside. I think I have it sorted now. So, Gary, as you all probably know, he is one of our big Amigos Labs contributors. He does some of the best how-to and sort of kooky knowledge about Amiga hardware videos around.
He's the only person I know that made me sad that I got rid of a bunch of zip drives. And also, his video of him blowing up the interface or whatever with that was
with the smoke coming out.
That was one of the all-time great, like complete disaster videos. I watched that. I was like, because the title of it caught me. I was like, oh,
yeah.
And I sat there. It's like, oh man, watching that, you're just like, no.
And there was an Amiga event that happened last week.
We weren't invited to this event.
This is the WAUG, the WAUG.
Where was this at?
This is the Amiga user group in Westchester County, New York.
Oh, yes. Okay, I know what you're talking about now.
And Amiga Will met up with the guys from Guru Meditation up there.
Yep, I saw photos of this.
And
what's it called again? The WAUG?
WAUG.
The WAUG.
Yeah. So
sounds like some sort of snowcat that you'd find in Jedi, for example, or no, Empire.
That's true. So if you are in the Westchester County, New York area, and you're an Amiga fan, you need to look these guys up. So just follow Guru Meditation on YouTube or Twitter, and they will show you the way.
It makes me very jealous.
The West Virginia Amiga user group's meeting right now.
Are we? Oh no, we've actually met more people here, so we could actually have a.
Yeah.
How many people went to war?
I think there were probably 5 or 6 people that were.
We might be able to muster there.
There were probably more. I was just looking at that one picture.
Our problem is active Amiga users. That's gonna be. We can get people that know about the Amiga, but people that are actually using the Amiga. That's a whole different order.
In fact, I've got a quick picture here. I'll show. So there's Will over there on the right, contributor Amiga Will, and then the rest of the gang there, and I see what appears to be an HP laptop with OS 3.1 on it.
Now Will, he's recently gotten up there to.
Yeah, he's new to the area, and I'm glad that he's found.
He jumped right in.
Amiga fans.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Good for those guys.
All right, Aaron. What news have you? Oh, actually, we got one more bit of news before we start the real news. Happy birthday to Neil Mansell, the man behind Kickstart Magazine, the official Amigos magazine. So, Neil,
a working machine.
He is a working machine.
He's got ideas. He's always active. Happy birthday, Neil.
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right, now we move on to the news.
All right, let me grab the doodad here. So, a little bit of news this week. Chris Fold sent over a thing. I haven't looked at this. This is more your bag than it is mine, folks. It's just a big Apple file. But they've released iUAE, the Amiga emulator for Apple iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch. I'm assuming this is an update from a previous.
Right. Now, I'll tell you why I think this is kind of interesting.
All right.
With iOS 11, which is the newest operating system coming out for your iDevices, it is actually they're actually turning on some sort of a file management system within the device itself. As every Android fan knows, one of the things that's less than ideal for what they call power users is the inability for you to actually get into the iPhone or the iPad's file structure and move files around. You usually have to open up an app and access your files that way.
Really?
So with iOS 11, they're trying to make the iPad in particular more of a legitimate computing platform. Like, this is the only computer you need, instead of it being just a media consumption device. So I don't know if this is going to allow you to do more things as far as, moving files from your computer onto the Amiga or onto the emulator. But this will be a neat project to follow. Usually, emulators don't get a whole lot of love on iOS. They usually get shut down pretty quickly.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see how this project moves along.
Now, do you have any iOS phones or tablets?
I do.
I think you have an iPhone.
I have an iPhone, and Eep has an iPad Mini, but I think that it is so old at this point that it no longer functions.
I see. So, but you might be inclined to have a look at this.
Sure, I'll have a look at it on my phone. I mean, there's nothing.
Because I've got nothing Apple in the house.
You got nothing Apple in your entire house?
I don't think there's anything Apple in there.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I have a lot of old crap.
Yeah,
I take that back. I think Dale left his Apple phone charging cord in the house.
There you go.
So there you go. They have infiltrated.
You've got something in there.
Yeah, I agree.
Just looking around right now, I see an Apple IIe, a Mac Plus. So most of my Apple stuff is of the vintage variety.
Well, like I said, that's something if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The fellows have, let me see, this is Galahad/FLT. They have released one of these, they've re-released a shooter, I should say, called Outlands. I've heard a lot about this game, Outlands. Have you ever heard of this thing?
It sounds familiar. It's a top-down deal, right?
I've never played it. I've heard about it. Anyway, they have released a 100% crack and fix for it, and so, which is good, because I'm guessing I guess it had problems. I haven't played this, but it's something I'd heard. I remember hearing about this a long time ago. I don't know. I'm looking at it now as we run the video here, and this is the first time I think I've ever laid eyes on it. It looks basic, doesn't it? But I mean, of course, looks, you never know. I see a lot of doodads on the side, so there must be something going on about it. But
right.
Whatever it is, you can now play it. This looks a little bit like, it reminds me a little bit of Astro Blaster, if you ever played that old game.
For the, I played it on the 2600.
Remember that one? Let's see here. Games Nostalgia has repacked has a repacked release of the game Deliverance Stormlord 2 for the PC and Mac. I'm guessing this is one of those, click it and go gimmicks.
This looks a lot like Gods.
This is another one that I've heard of, and it does. Yeah,
I mean,
they said it was very gaudy. Wow, this does look like Gods. I've never seen it, but that guy looks awesome.
He's got that same kind of awkward strut that the guy in Gods has.
Hey,
too.
if you're going to emulate something, that's the one. It looks pretty good.
It looks better than Gods.
Right now.
I mean, it looks very high res.
Yeah, so that might put that on the list. But man, look, that is exactly like Gods.
And look at some of these. Let's skip forward to one of these enemies. So
it looks like an alien. Monkey.
So we'll have to take a look at that.
Pretty good. By the way, the news on this stuff both came from our buddies over at Indie Retro News, who we love.
The best site.
What would we do without
Indie Retro
right?
News?
Now, this is something I found interesting. Now, and I'm not fully up to speed on this. I read an article on it, but it didn't fully enlighten me. The Amiga on the Lake gang over there on the lake, the American distributors, have agreed on a deal with apparently with Amiga kit and to sell the Aeon to be an Aeon dealer. Right now, if you'll recall, just about a month ago, I guess it was, they had like a throwdown.
Yeah.
Where the Amiga on the Lake guys sort of were like saying, like, yeah, we're cutting all ties.
This is the worst company that's ever existed.
As I recall, they weren't being supplied appropriately, or I don't know what happened. And, one thing I wonder, and having, again, we ordered something from Amiga on the Lake, and it was here like that. Quick. Perfect. Well wrapped. Everything done. They sent it fast on their nickel. So I've got nothing bad to say about these guys. And I wonder if the guys overseas didn't know how serious these guys were about what they were doing. I've heard enough interviews. I mean, these guys are really they're gonna go off the cliff or they're gonna make it work. One of the two. There's not gonna be in between. They're gonna lose their shirts. Or they're gonna make it work. And this is good news, man. I really want these guys to succeed for the obvious reason that when you're in this side of the pond, if you need Amiga stuff, you're boned. I mean, what took me 2 days to get in the mail would have taken I don't know, who knows how long it would have taken. Remember how long it took me to get the last thing I ordered from Amiga Kit?
Forever.
And it's nothing against Amiga Kit or anybody else overseas. It's just that what are you going to do? You're shipping overseas.
It's a long way.
Weird stuff happens, It's a lot easier to get it domestically, and I'm hoping that these guys will get huge. Again, I would love to see them support the older stuff more than they do, but they have some stuff. Obviously, they've got the ROMs I needed. So this is good news. So I was very pleasantly surprised to read that news, and let's hope that means they're going to go on to bigger and better things. And then lastly, this is actually several days old, but I hadn't got around to watching it until this morning. But Dan of the and he's one of the guys that does the Retro Hour show, which we of course I want to mention, by the way, that the Retro Hour guys had the second part of their interview this week with Howard Scott Warshaw, or the past week, and it was of course Howard Scott Warshaw who made E.T. He also made Yard's Revenge, and many Indiana Jones for the Atari, and he is a true Renaissance man. He's great, and those guys they're awesome to get him on. Always great. But this particular video is on a piracy on the Amiga, and they go into Xcopy, among other things on there. Which Xcopy is that if you were an old pirate, this is one of your programs of choice to copy these Amiga games. And it was, if you're into sort of in a weird way reminiscing, because the way Dan starts is he talks about it, he said his buddy had him fix up his 500, and he'd forgotten how he was knocking some discs off for him. He'd forgotten what it was like to put the labels on the discs and get your felt pen and write, whatever you're writing on. I mean, he's like, and he said part of him felt good and this nostalgia was, I can relate to this. I mean, I know, yes, piracy wrong, enough said, but I mean, when you sat around doing that so much, and you had your buddy over, and you were just leaning back, and you're shooting crap, and you're doing your label, and okay, pass this over here, but mostly you're just chatting with your buddy.
It's a social thing.
It was,
yeah.
And you, if you think about it, I mean, if you think about this now, if you went to work tomorrow and they said, Boat, here's a stack of discs this tall. We need you to format all these, and then we need you to copy stuff with them. Each one of these discs is probably going to take you 5 minutes to get through, or 3. You'd be like, oh God, I mean, what a nightmare. So when you have nostalgia about that's saying something. But of course, you knew you were going to get a goodie, go home and try it out. But it was still. But anyway, that's sort of what tips off this thing. I can relate. So I was amused by it. If you're into that sort of thing, give the video a watch.
Cool. Let's jump over to site updates. Just as always, if you head over to everythingamiga.com, there's always new content coming up. First thing is Dreamcatcher has put up a couple new articles. This is one of my favorite things that he's ever done. Ghosts of Gaming Shops Past.
It made me think.
Yeah, he talks about his memories growing up in Manchester and seeing. I guess this was a PC repair shop, but when they took down the sign, you can still see the exchange there. And did you ever? I don't know. I was never a person that really did a lot of game trading back into the day. Like, I know that Funko Land, they used to have like a price sheet where they give you so much per month. Did you ever used to take your old games and trade them in for cash or trade or anything like that?
I've never done it.
I've never done it either.
Now, in terms of the Amiga, I've sold some on eBay recently, but in terms of that would be unheard of. I don't know of a store that would give you credit.
I guess that was more of a maybe a European thing.
Well, I mean, it became an American thing eventually, because you got to think Funko Land. I was old when that thing came.
Oh yeah, out. And that's for console stuff.
Right.
I don't think they did
for
anything with
PC
PCs.
stuff. I do remember places eventually started renting PC games. So I thought but these places would never last. It's funny. I read that article and I was heading up to see wrestling. I went and saw wrestling Saturday.
Yeah, I know we should talk about this briefly. because I want to know about when you saw live and in person Mouth of the South Jimmy Hart.
What about him? He was
you
a
saw
real
he's a
nice
living
guy.
legend.
No, that was last year.
I thought this was this past weekend.
No, that was a long time ago when I saw Jimmy Hart.
He wasn't at Madison this past
No, that
weekend?
was Brother Love was there this weekend.
Oh.
Yeah, but Jimmy Hart was real nice. I asked him what his secret to eternal youth was because he looks almost identical.
Mm-hmm.
He's in real good shape. He said, listen, man. He goes, I've been on the road a long time. He goes, but the key to living a long, healthy life, don't drink, don't smoke, don't do any drugs. And I was like, wow, Jimmy, you must have been the only guy on the bus doing that. He's like, you're right, man. I've outlived them all. But he was a super nice guy.
That's cool.
But on the way up to wrestling, I passed my old Amiga store.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still there. And it's a
Where was that, Thurman?
Thurman? The hell are you talking about?
Right there on the train.
It's in South Charleston,
Oh, okay.
you knucklehead. But now it's a jiu-jitsu studio.
Really?
Yeah.
Full circle.
And I thought about taking a picture and I forgot. But it was very similar to that. Every time I go past it, I think about it. But the transition, because this sort of dovetails. And I was talking to our buddy John from Charleston, who had went to this that store, ended up moving to another place. But they're still around after all these years. And I think I mentioned this on the show previous, maybe the 100th show, where he went up there and talked to these guys and said, hey, do you have any Amiga stuff left? And they're like, yeah, we got like a box of it, So anyway, they got back with it. They didn't have any Amiga stuff left after all. But they did say, listen, they were like, if we find anything, we'll let you know. He said, but you can have this. And they gave him, admittedly non-functional, but they gave him in the box a C64.
Wow.
And so he showed me a picture of it and took it home. But it's kind of neat that the place that I used to buy Amiga software, all these things, they're still around. Mm-hmm. If you know anything about computer stores in America, they're up and down like a yo-yo. Yeah. But yeah, that story took me back. I every once in a while go past a place where I remember buying a particular piece of software, and it's always sad. And that one, I thought that was a good article. It made me think.
And Dreamcatcher also has a review of a couple water-based Amiga games. And if that doesn't excite you, I don't know what will.
I would love those little guys.
Again, he goes off in all his normal Dreamcatcherian directions. But I really enjoyed reading this article, and every time I read them, I'm like, boy, we need to check that out. And then I remember playing Thundercats and all the episodes that
I believe he did like Crystal. Was that one an Aquanaut?
Aquanaut, yeah.
I've never played Aquanaut. If I never heard of that, but I had heard of Crystal. I mean, I see ads for it too, so that's one I'm going to have to put on the list. And look at his article. I mean, it looked pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. So thank you, Dreamcatcher, once again for turning us on to some new games for the list. And that's it, I think, for the site updates this week. Pretty quiet on the everythingamiga.com front. But,
it's summertime, but I think
people are out.
We're going to start cranking it back up.
Yeah.
I have shirked my duties as a content provider due to I've got a myriad of reasons. Pick one, but I've got a couple things that I've been eyeballing, so I'm going to get back into it.
Cool. All right, Aaron, let's go ahead and jump right in. The Star Wars trilogy.
Ooh.
Now, before we start, tell me about the first time that you saw Star Wars.
It's funny you should mention that, because I was going to go into the story anyway.
I knew you would.
As a young Aaron, if you'll recall, in America, Star Wars came out in 1977. Okay, which means I was 6. I was less than 6. I was 5 and some change, depending on when it came out. I can't remember what part of the year. And I remember vividly, and I'm not like Rob O'Hara, where I can draw upon these memories when I was like 2.
Right.
I got nothing. I don't know what was going on. I was just a big mush-brained goof. And I remember sitting in the living room of our old house, and the ads for Star Wars came on the TV.
Was this in Jersey?
No, this was we were in West Virginia, and I saw this ad. I was just like, I couldn't freaking believe it. As a kid, I couldn't freaking believe what I was seeing. And I remember telling the old man, I said, Dad, I want to see that. I didn't know what that was. And every time it would come on, I would tell him, we're going to have to go see that when it comes out. And so we ended up going to see Star Wars. And it wasn't too long after it had been out. And I believe we saw it... I believe we saw it in St. Albans, but I can't be wondering. I know I've seen one of the 3 there, and man, I couldn't believe it.
St. Albans at the Alban?
No, at the mall.
There used to be a theater at the mall?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember I was pleased, and so And I'm trying to think if I saw any movies in the theater before that. I mean, I'm sure they took me to something or another, but whatever it was, I don't remember what it was. This I remember, Star Wars. And so I was in eager anticipation of, even as a young idiot, I knew there was going to be another one. Got to have another one, and sure enough, it came. So I saw all these right away, and I'm old enough to have been one of the guys that saw it right when it came out. I don't know how many people could say that, but I was there.
Most of the people that are your age can say
that.
Yeah,
I know. But what about you? You were a Star Wars guy out of the gate, or did it take a while?
Not really. I grew up with the toys because my mom was an avid yard sailor. And so she'd always go to yard sales and get the toys. And this is back before people knew the toys were going to be worth anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this whole collection of Star Wars figures, but I didn't have any context of, I didn't see the movies in a way that I remembered them until the special editions came out.
Oh, geez. So, just for reference, how old were you in '77?
I was -4.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't even went there.
So yeah, I remember seeing the movies at Dairy Mart, and being a little bit. I was scared of a lot of things as a child, and I remember that the covers were scary to me, and I didn't want to see them. I also remembered seeing something odd. I remembered seeing, and this is something that I'd never, and I don't know if it's a weird memory, but I remember seeing the movie being rated PG, and then there was like a sticker on it that the Dairy Mart people had put on there that said like, may not be suitable for children on that, and it was on Jedi, and I thought how weird, and that made me not want to see it even more because it made it even more scary.
It's all that teddy bear killing.
But I didn't, and then later on I read about how like PG used to be a much more wide ranging rating than it is now.
Yeah, I mean, you remember Poltergeist? It was one of the first PG-13 movies ever, as I recall. And I remember seeing that and being like, oh, this is not appropriate for a 13-year-old. I was like, oh, they can see where that guy's ripping his own face off. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But wow. So have you seen the Star Wars trilogy before the enhancements?
So I did. I had the. There were still really easy ways to get it on VHS, and so the first VHS set that I bought was the non-enhanced version.
Yeah.
But I definitely didn't grow up. I was not part of the outrage that accompanied the special editions.
It's funny, and we're not going to make this the movie show, but we have to touch on a little.
You got to do it. It's Star Wars.
But I went and saw the re-releases when I lived in Lexington, when they re-released them in the theater for the first time, with the and this is when the enhanced DVD version. I guess this is the version I saw in a theater. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think too much about it, but I was like, why? It's the same reason I always wonder, why did they bother to do this? Why are you screwing with this? Can they change stuff? And one thing I distinctly remember was they changed the explosion of the Death Star, which I thought, well, that's kind of weird. And I don't remember if this is one of the ones. Do you remember the one you watched the first time, the Enhanced? Is that the first time that they tried to make it where Greedo shot first?
I think so. I think that was the first time that they changed it.
That's weak. And I had seen I don't know if you've ever seen that lost footage that they added on with Jabba the Hutt, who's a big fat like Irish guy, and they end up superimposing the Jabba we all know now over him. But if you watch,
did you actually see the big fat Irish guy?
No, I watched the PBS special one time where they had that scene where they're in this hangar. It's like, oh, pardon me, boy, and I was like, what the hell is this? And then they end up using that years later, and they superimpose Jabba over.
Oh yeah, like where Han steps on his tail. And
so I've been appalled by Star Wars. Never has one series made me so happy and so angry.
Well, you're a Star Wars fan.
Trilogy. Well, it was.
You can't truly be a Star Wars fan unless you seethe with rage when you think about it.
Yeah. So. With all that aside, we will venture into the realm of the actual arcade game, and that got ported to the Amiga. So, do you remember seeing this arcade game? I guess that'd be my first question.
No, as a child, I never saw this.
Have you played this in the arcade?
I've played the stand-up version. I've never played the cockpit version.
I will say that this came in several varieties. And when I first walked to an arcade as a young lad, and I believe this came out in the arcades, I want to say 83 or 84. Mm-hmm. You talk about losing your freaking mind, man. This game was awesome. It had the color vector, which I had never seen. I think this may be the first one that did color vectors. It had the sit down in the sucker, like you're flying a freaking X-Wing. It was just like...
So it didn't bother you that this game came out a good 5 years after the first Star Wars movie?
No.
You weren't...
It didn't matter a bit. I saw this thing. I mean, you instantly... And it's one of those... You know it's awesome. I saw a guy playing it. I was just like, that's awesome. And so when I sat down and played it, I was right. The controls in it, which I believe were the... I think this guy adapted... Since I read that the guy that made Battlezone adapted this control scheme from the military version of Battlezone to be used in Star Wars. I may be getting it backwards, but I mean, the controls were unique. You know, you've got that yoke and with the buttons on it. And when you sat down, of course, the stand-up version is equally cool, but not equally, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You sit down in this seat, and you're Red 5 standing by, and the music kicks up, and you're just like, holy smokes, where did this come from? So it was a perennial favorite of mine. So all of a sudden, it's 1988. Here I've got my Amiga 1000, and this disc happens my way, and it's a Star Wars disc. I'm like, oh boy, let's give this a shot. And there it went. So, Star Wars, again, it was released in 88 on one disc. It was Domark published it most everywhere else, but they did have a USA release that was done by Broderbund. The story behind this game, I believe we documented in one. I think it was maybe Dreamcatcher did a write-up on our site about this game, or the guy that made it, who is a guy named, Jurgen Friedrich. How's that? You want to give that a shot?
Well, that's Jurgen.
Friedrich. Oh boy, Jurgen. I like Jurgen. That sounds cool.
Jurgen.
Anyways, this guy apparently is a super genius, and he sat down and did these versions. And then this is the story I've heard that Vector Graphics came along and just bought it and said, "Okay, good job," and they published it. This guy Jurgen also did, and this will not surprise you, Hard Driving 1 and 2, and Stun Runner, which are all sort of similar.
Right, they're sort of a rail shooter type deal.
And I've played all these on the Amiga, and they're all pretty good. All right, but that's a story for the time. This was released in multiple languages. It runs on the OCS. No surprise there, because it's, by the time it was out. And it runs with a mouse or a joystick. This game got about 1 million ports, as you can imagine. It was on the Amstrad, the Mac Classic, I should say, Atari 2600, 5200, the ST, the Electron, the ColecoVision, blah, 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 PCs, the ZX Spectrum. There was 1 million of them. It was released in 83, so I did get that right. There was a PC release as well. So what do you do in this game? You play Luke Skywalker. You sit in the hot seat behind the controls of his X-Wing, Red 5, and you go through and try to blow up the Death Star. In the first level, when the game starts up, you can pick between 3 different difficulties. Which, again, this stuff pretty much, if it's in the arcade, it's pretty much in the game for the most part. You pick your difficulty. If you pick a higher difficulty, you get more points. Of course, it's harder. And then you take off. First level, you are blowing away TIE fighters. Presumably, this is the approach to the Death Star. You've got to knock out a bunch of these suckers so you can get in there good and tight. On the first go around, you go straight. If you play the beginner level, you go straight from blowing these TIE fighters up and once you've blown up enough or enough time has elapsed, I'm never quite sure what exactly happens. You go into the Death Star and it zooms in, and something else this game has is digitized sound. He goes, "Look at the size of that thing," and he zooms in, and then. When you play beginner, the next level is the trench run. If you'll recall in the movie, Luke has to get down the trench and shoot his torpedoes into the heart of the ship, into the exhaust port to blow it up, right? Same thing. You're going down this trench, there are fireballs coming at you. On the first level, that's pretty much all you've got to contend with, and you go down and blow up the Death Star. Pretty cool stuff. Second level, they add a few things. You've got your starting dogfight, then you go into a area where you have to blow up towers, the tops of these towers, if you'll recall in the movie where they're zooming across the surface of the Death Star, zigzagging through a bunch of towers and buildings and stuff. You've got to blow the tops of them off. You've got there's the bell. You've got to blow the tops of these towers off, and you have a set amount you need to blow off to finish that level. And if you get them all, you'll get a bonus. And then you go to the trench. And eventually in the trench will get harder and harder because in the first level, the trench is just empty. You just fly down it, avoid the fireballs, shoot the thing shooting the fireballs if you want, and blow up the Death Star. As it gets harder, you are getting obstacles put in your way. Multicolored bars that block, there are blockages in the tunnel. You've got to sort of avoid them. You can fly over them, you can fly under them. Sometimes you can go to the left or right of them. As you go through the game, these become more and more clogged. The trench does, making it more difficult to get down and blow up the Death Star. After you complete that, it always starts over the same thing. Now from then on, you're going to do the same thing over and over, except they make it harder. The dogfight will have more TIE fighters. They'll shoot faster. The TIE fighters can shoot more fireballs. They shoot strings of fireballs. There are more blockades in the trench, and eventually you just keep playing until you get killed. That's pretty much the long and short of it. What do you think?
Well, this game is pretty much it's exactly like the arcade game. Mm-hmm. Now, I was not able to play it exactly like the arcade game because I had emulation issues.
Yes, you did.
Even when I dialed back the speed of the Amiga on WinUAE to -90, it still ran too quickly. So I found it to be very difficult. However, I still had a good time. Let's take a look at some of the port comparisons.
Okay. I will say, just to since we're just summing up the Amiga port of this, there are things that are lacking. We talked about these. The Amiga port has very little music, and what music it has is very sad rendition of the theme from Star Wars. It sounds like I told Boat in the streaming video. It sounds like one lone bassoon sitting in an empty orchestra pit. It's real pathetic. And then in the arcade, when you start the game, that orchestra keeps saying da 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 da. Well, it's it's electronic music, but it still sounds cool, and you feel like you're really there's music backing everything you do in the game. When you blow up the Death Star, there's a little tune. In the Amiga version, no tunes. No tunes. It's just that one little sad song that plays during the demo screens, and also the Amiga version does support the mouse, which is just a few weeks ago I said I never play anything with the mouse. I was wrong. This is the one thing I play with the mouse because it works perfectly for the Amiga. It's an advantage it would have over a lot of other systems having a mouse that everyone uses. It also has a lot of the digitized sound effects from the arcade.
The speeches there.
Which you got to have it. You've got to have that, so that makes it better. So go ahead, Bo. Let's have a look at your thing.
Okay. So these are various ports. If you're watching on YouTube, we have the Amiga version, the arcade version, the Spectrum version, and the BBC Micro version. They all give you the same sort of deal. What I thought was interesting about this is looking at the ports from the Spectrum and the Micro, it really makes you realize that what the Amiga is doing is not really that special. That creating wireframe graphics and having them scale, as they come towards you, is something that even the BBC Micro manages to do. So that's something that I had an incorrect opinion. I was like, man, only the Amiga could pull this thing off. But that's definitely not the case. What the Amiga does do better than the Micro and the Spectrum is your movement is not really shown. Like in the BBC Micro version, you are basically static and you move the crosshair around the screen, versus in the Amiga version and of course in the arcade version, when you move the ship, you feel like the ship is moving with you.
The actual graphic of the ship actually slightly moves around.
Right. Yeah. The Micro and the Spectrum versions are more of a shooting gallery type experience.
It's almost like a Operation Wolf sort of affair.
Yeah.
You just move your cursor over the thing.
Right. But overall, I think all the systems had a pretty good port of this game. What do you think, Aaron?
This is the first time I'm sitting here looking at the BBC version, and wow, you're right. That's pretty solid, And vectors are an interesting graphic element when it comes to games that I never thought they were fully explored to the best of their capabilities. Because look at the BBC Micro here; it's playing this game pretty darn well, and you could use this sort of graphical element in other games, and I think you can get away with it. I think people were, at the time especially, were used to the vectors, and you can make it work. I think maybe that was sort of a missed opportunity. I've always liked the vector graphics, and color vectors even are really awesome. So and now I'm looking at the ZX Spectrum one. It looks considerably slower than the BBC Micro, and it also is doing the same sort of thing where it's sort of a shooting gallery type thing. The X-Wing looks better, but it's not actually moving around. I mean, you're right. The effect on all these is pretty similar. But the Amiga version is of the three that we're looking at here. It is clearly the best non-arcade version. They did a great job. It's very similar to the arcade version. It is a shame that they didn't bother to fool with the music too much, but at least they put the sound effects in. Something else you can do that I should mention in case people ask is you can use the Force, which I try to use at least in the first couple levels. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I've never tried to do this.
If you go down the trench and don't shoot, you're using the Force. And so if you get to the end and all you do is shoot in the torpedo or shoot in the exhaust port, you get a Force bonus.
Oh.
Yeah, so cool. That's the level you could do that with, which I always thought that was kind of cool. Because Obi-Wan says use the Force at the beginning. He's not kidding. I always thought that was neat that they put that in there. So.
Yeah. How did this game review?
It did pretty well. Of course, it got repeated by about 1 million things, although some places didn't like it. You're looking at Amiga Computing gave it a 70%, Amiga UI gave it an 8 out of 10, CU gave it a 7 out of 10, and Your Amiga gave it 74. So those are actually kind of not that great. I would rate this much higher. And the reason I say that is it's a lot like Golden Axe. Like, look at where it came from, how well is the port, and how beloved is the game. I guess maybe people got tired of it. Maybe they think there was enough stuff to do, but it does exactly what the box says, and it's very seldom that happens.
Right.
The box says this is the arcade game you play, and it is. It's got pretty much, with the exception of the music, it's got pretty much all the elements of the arcade down very well. So in my opinion, I would say 8 out of 10 would be a minimum score. I think this is a really probably one of the best coin-op conversions on the Amiga, if not maybe the.
Okay.
What did you think of it? And of course, you don't have the history with this game and I do. What did you think of it? What did you think of the game in general?
I think anytime that you can have an arcade conversion this exact on the Amiga minus the sound, I think it's worthwhile. Now, maybe the reviews were coming at it from the point that should I buy this or should I buy a new game?
That's true, because this would have came out in the Amiga, like I said, 5 years after the arcade version. So, and of course, maybe then Vector had fallen out of style for sure.
Right, so. And I can understand the lower scores. I don't know if I would rate it in the 70s, but yeah. Now, this is the kind of game that I love because it's mindless blasting and it looks pretty. I love color vector graphics. I love vector graphics in general.
Yeah, they're always great.
Yeah, and so I would have reviewed it higher myself.
Something else we should mention, and I mentioned this in the stream, is that one of the best aspects of this, you can do this in the arcade too, is when and this is just a little thing, but when the TIE fighters are all retreating back to the Death Star, you can still shoot them. And what's great is when you've got Darth Vader in your sights, you can just ring him up, and it's very satisfying because he's driving that cool looking TIE fighter.
Right.
You just ring him up over and over and over.
Yeah, you can't actually destroy him. Yeah,
but it's fun to pummel him. So I think that's fun. But overall, like I said, I think this is a very strong game and a strong film, obviously as well.
All right, let's talk about Empire.
So Empire came out in the theater in 1980. Again, I saw it probably that same year, or certainly. Within a year of its release.
Now it's funny because Chad is here. He just came in, and Chad has a pretty interesting story about what happened when we went to see Empire. Right? Was it Empire when we went to see the special edition at the theater?
Empire. Well,
this is where you lost your ticket.
Oh, it was actually New Hope.
Oh, well, never mind. Don't tell the story.
Well, I think it was one of those two.
Okay, but anyway, so Chad was in a panic, and I was in a panic, empathetically for Chad also because we waited in line. I don't know if you saw the special editions in the theater, but around here there were huge crowds. There were long lines because there had been so long since anything had happened Star Wars related.
We went to New Hope at the Cinema 7, I think, that's in Charleston, like downtown Charleston.
Yeah.
With like the large stadium.
That's the only time that I've ever been to that theater is when I saw those movies.
That's me. And then we saw the Empire in the theater that was that's now the West Virginia DEP building, like location. In Kanawha City. I do remember losing the ticket, but I don't remember which one.
Oh yeah. So. I remember you were not having a good time.
No, I mean I think obviously I found it.
Yeah, you found it. It was like it was in the lining of your coat or something like that. So.
God, that's bad luck.
Yeah. All right.
So Empire. Again, the movie was out in '80. It came out on the Amiga in the same year as the other one, '88. So, which I thought was, in fact, all these sort of pretty much came out at the same time. So again, this is a single disc release. Again, Domark did it worldwide, and Vector Graphics did the game. Now there has been some speculations that the same guy that they used the same engine or whatnot, or a lot of the same material from the first game to make this one from the original fella that did it. But I can't confirm that. I'm pretty sure Dreamcatcher wrote an article about this, so if you look through our page, you'll probably turn something up. So again, this was a OCS game. It's another color vector game. Now this is an interesting game, and obviously Empire was an awesome movie. So Atari was looking to capitalize. This is the story I've heard anyway. Atari's looking to capitalize on the fact that they'd sold a ton of these Star Wars cabinets, and so they put out a conversion kit for it, and it was Empire Strikes Back, which is why this is another color vector game. The game, keep in mind that we had a lot of arcades around here. I have never seen this one in the arcade. I had to go watch a film or a video on YouTube just to see how closely the Amiga got it. This must not have been very popular, and you told me you'd never seen it in the arcade either. So what do you do in this game? Well, in this one, who would you say you play the part of? I'm not 100%. You multiple parts.
Yeah, you're playing multiple parts.
And the first version of this, and this is going to require a certain amount of backstory. If you'll recall, in Empire Strikes Back, the Empire had sent out like droids all over the universe to try to find the rebels, and they had sent one to Hoth, and it was a little like crabby looking or octopus looking droid that was supposed to look for life, and if it found anything that looked like a rebel base, it would send back a signal. All right, with this loose premise in mind, we come to the first screen of this. In the first screen of this, you play, and I'm guessing you're in a snow speeder in the game. You don't really. This is not a well-defined ship in this game. You just have two little like gun turrets that stick out the bottom of the screen, and for most of the levels. And so you were supposed to go around and blow up these transmission droids before they can transmit your location. All right. So this differs in the movie in the fact that there's multiple droids, just like a ton of them, that you could try to stop them. And in the game, you can't stop them, but you can try to. I guess you can only hope to contain them, as the saying goes. And so you drive around, and these things will, as you see them, you can shoot them. And occasionally they will shoot up like a wave. I mean, how would you describe what that is?
It's like a transmission, like a physical representation.
That's right. And so when they send out 4 of these, that round ends. So basically, you're going around and shooting as much of the stuff as you can. So
unlike the movie where there's one of these things, there's hundreds of these things in the game.
And also unlike the movie where snowspeeders didn't blow them up.
Yeah,
I believe it was Chewie and Han blew them up. Right. But in this, snowspeeders blow them up. Again, who's driving these snowspeeders? Who knows? So this is sort of a weird. And plus, of course, Hoth is an ice planet.
Well, who is that person that whenever they don't have a character for something, they always say it's like Wedge Antilles or something like that?
Well, isn't it Dak that got killed?
Yeah.
So let's pretend it's Dak, because Dak needs some redemption for his pathetic display. So anyway, that first level, you're blowing up these guys. Now you're on a stark, desolate screen to do this. I mean, it looks like you're in space. There's no way that this thing can really
it looks
accurately portray that you're in snow.
Right. It looks like a vector game, and that means that you have to have a black background.
Yeah, this is where Vector sort of owes you this game. And so we should also mention that you can spell Jedi with certain shots in the game, and when you get Jedi, I believe it gives you extra man. You don't really. It's funny. The big word Jedi comes up and it fills in a letter. It's sort of like a Mr. Do or something.
Right,
You're getting
extra.
but it's much less of an event when you do it. So once this level is completed and these things have sent up the little transmissions, you'll see a cool kind of a zoom in on, like, I guess what's supposed to be a recreation of the Rebel base inside this mountain, which it looks pretty good. And we speculated we thought in the when we did the playthrough that this would have been an awesome thing to have in the background of the whole level, so it wouldn't look like you just run around in space.
Right.
But that's just the way it is. So once you get off that level, you move into like the next phase of the game. The next phase of the game is the classic scene in Empire where the rebels try to beat back the approaching AT-STs and AT-ATs, the AT-ATs. And you are in your snow speeder.
What is the correct pronunciation? Is it AT-AT or is it AT-AT?
We've called them both, because if you say AT-AT, then you're trying to describe the two-legged ones, which I believe are the AT-STs.
Mm-hmm.
You can't call them the AT-ST. That sounds like crap. So you can either say AT-AT or you can say AT-AT, but anyway it goes, you're saying AT-ST. You got no choice on that one. And when we say this, in case you live under a rock, the AT-ATs are these big, huge robots that are probably 10 stories tall, and they look like camels, basically, like big robotic camels. They kind of loaf over the snow.
The least efficient way to traverse a snow planet.
And then you've got the half version of those with the AT-ST, which is like if you took the big ones, just cut the tail end of them off and shrank them about 5 stories. They lumber around.
I had heard that the nickname for the AT-STs were chicken walkers.
Chicken walker, that would work, especially in the third movie. They really were more chickeny.
Yeah.
So in this second level, and which is probably the best level of this game, I would say, wouldn't you, Bo?
The second level is the only good level.
Yeah. So in this one, you drive your AT-ATs, or you drive your snow speeder around, which is your spaceship, and you are trying to shoot these AT-STs and the AT-ATs. Well, there are 2 ways to blow these things up. One is you can shoot them in the little visor hole that's red on the screen. Mm-hmm. Which, this reminds me of the old, if you ever played the Atari 2600 version of Star Wars, did you ever play that, where the AT-ATs march across the screen, there's a little tiny weak spot behind their neck, and you can shoot them, that's the only way you can kill them. Mm-hmm. And it made me mad there, too, because in the movie, you're not just shooting these things in a little tiny spot. I mean, these things are tanks. And so your other option, which is in the game, is to fire these tow cables, which in the game they're more like 2 boomerangs with a string between them. That's what they look like. But with the thought of it, you're going to trip these things, which happened in the movie. You'd wrap their legs up, and in a hilarious bit, they would fall over, which is always funny. Then you can shoot them, but in the game, they just go away when you shoot them.
I think one, like when it hits the ground, it just explodes on its own in the movie. And you can use the tow cables on the STs too. That works on both, but you've only got a limited number. Amount, yeah.
So basically, you just fly around doing that. That's the level. You can also fly under the ATs to get a bonus. But I mean, that's pretty much it. There's not much left to say about that level. What are your thoughts?
I don't dislike this game as much as I think you do. I think that shooting the tow cables and watching the things tumble down is more satisfying than anything you do in the first game.
It is satisfying, don't get me wrong.
I mean, blowing up the Death Star is cool, but you're really just firing another shot. With this, you're firing a secondary weapon, and that in the way that it comes out, and you see it wrap around, and you see the guys tumble down. I think that's really.
I agree with a but, and which I'll get to later. But yes, that level was great. So eventually, you move off planet. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we're back into space for the third wave, and the third screen is just a wave of TIE fighters. Basically, pretend that you're playing the first game and replace the Death Star with a Star Destroyer, which looks like a ship shaped like a big Dorito. So in this game, you just shoot a crap. In this level, shoot a crap load of TIE fighters. Mm-hmm. That's it. I mean, it's exactly the same. They look great. They play just like the first one.
It's too bad there wasn't like another sort of trench runish type thing you could do with the Star Destroyer.
Which we'll get into that. And then finally, and this is the crummiest level in my opinion, is the last level, which and we should mention that you're in the Millennium Falcon for the TIE Fighter zone. So your ship changes shape from the two little gun turrets to the front end of the Millennium Falcon, and it looks like the Millennium Falcon has been they've pimped their ride. It looks like it's portrayed with these blue and red neon. It looks.
Well, I mean, all the ships have blue and red neon.
It's really bizarre for some reason on that one. So the last level, you're in the Millennium Falcon. It's the classic, sort of was in the movie, like asteroid belt. Mm-hmm. Now, if you'll recall in the movie, there are some incredible scenes where the Millennium Falcon definitely maneuvers through these asteroids, and it's turning like this, and it's barely getting through. It's freaking awesome. In this game, it looks like a huge Darth Vader is pelting you with snowballs from afar. These are perfectly round asteroids that are flung towards you in mass, and you just basically, you can't shoot them. You got to just move out of the way of them. That's that. You just avoid them.
Yeah, it's lame.
And then it's over. Then you start all the way back to the beginning. And that's the game. Now, you were saying I didn't like this game as much as the first one, and you're right. But we found an article in Retro Gamer where they interviewed the guy that made these games, and he was talking about how much trouble he had making this one, because unlike Star Wars, where you have these various scenes that that lend themselves to the game, Empire, and I hadn't thought about this until I read the article, Empire doesn't really lend itself to that. With the exception of the stuff on Hoth, really there's nothing else that you could, in a ship, that really translates well. Plus, where Star Wars had the Ultra ending with the blowing up the Death Star, it was awesome. The ending of Empire is a depressing thing that doesn't involve spaceships, and there's no way you could. What are you going to do? You're boned. Right. So Empire was hamstring right out of the gate. That much said, I thought the Amiga version, having looked at the arcade version, much like the first one, it's pretty much dead on. Mm-hmm. So again, if you're going to go by a game's ability to come home, this one came home well. They also improved the music, was better. The graphics were just as good, and it had more content ish. It's got more screens. To be fair. So overall, I think it's a pretty good attempt. I mean, it's a great attempt at the arcade, which was flawed by default. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts?
I think I like this one more, honestly. I think it's got more variety. There's more to do. The only bad thing is that you don't get to blow up the Death Star. If you could somehow just shoehorn, what they should have done was just thrown cannon to the wind and just put the trench run in this game too.
Well, I was thinking, it's funny you should mention, I was thinking about summer games, all right, where they took the summer games too and you could integrate them. Mm-hmm. If you could somehow do that to these games, then you got something.
Yeah.
And you're right, you'd have to be out of order.
And that's sort of what they did much, much later in the arcades when they brought out the Star Wars arcade game and took the best scenes from all three movies. And and of course it wasn't a vector game.
No, it was not. I never liked that game, but yeah, I know what you mean. But I mean, and I'm looking at these now. We're both got his comparison videos up, and this one is the BBC Micro's not moving at a brisk pace.
No.
In this one, and
this one, it looks like the Spectrum version's got a little bit of a faster moving gameplay environment. And it actually looks a little bit better too. The ship colors are more accurate.
Yeah,
this might have been a lazy port on the part of the BBC Micro.
Yeah, it is odd that this one is running so much more crummy than the first one we watched. But again, the Amiga version, if you compare it to the arcade, I mean, it's very, very favorable, and they did a good job. They did a good job of converting it. And of course, we should mention that much like the original vector game, you can choose your difficulty level. There's even a thing that shows you the instructions. So that's all pretty cool. But I mean, it's pretty much dead on, I think. So,
well, how did this game review?
Let's have a quick look here. Let me consult the chart of fun. This one reviewed about, let me see here. So we've got 5 out of 10 from Amiga UI, 84% from Generation 4, and your Amiga 84, Zap 82. So actually,
it reviewed a little bit better.
It did review a little bit better. Again, this would have been a newer game, and I will say one thing about this game. Ponder this, if you will. This is a game on all platforms that got played way more at home than it ever did in the arcade. Mm-hmm. I can almost guarantee you that this had a very, very limited release. Something you got to consider about the arcade version of Star Wars, as great as it was, it came out in '83, and this would have came out a couple years later. And those color vector arcade machines were notoriously finicky. If you have ever played Tempest, there's another game that has a color vector game, and these things tend to break. And when a color vector breaks, it'll often catch fire. These things, they don't just sort of break. They break.
Mm-hmm.
So this game probably saw more. This was probably a fresher game at home because it had been so rare in the arcade,
right?
And so that could have played into part of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fresher item on the menu. Plus, it wouldn't have been as old in '88.
That's true.
So I don't know if that made a difference, but who knows?
All right, well, we move on to the final game of the series, Return of the Jedi.
Ooh, now this game,
this is a horse of a different color.
It is. So this one was released in '88. The movie that this is based on, of course, is Jedi or Return of the Jedi, which came out in '83. Okay, so now we're in '83 when the movie comes out. Now by then, the Star Wars people knew about merchandising. They knew about, so this game was probably in the makings pretty early on, I would say. So I don't know exactly what year this got released in the arcade, but I would wager it got released pretty soon after the movie.
Yeah, I think this is the only one that managed to. Well, no, because Jedi came out in '83, right?
That's right.
And so this had to have come out much later.
I'm talking the arcade. It would have came out in probably '84, '85.
No.
Well, I would wager this one was in production earlier. To be honest with you, I'll have to look that into that.
I think this looks like '87.
This is on Atari System 2 hardware.
Yeah, I'm going to take a guess. Chad's looking it up now.
I believe this is on the same hardware as Marble Madness.
Yeah, and Paperboy. It's that system one.
I think this is System 2. And the reason I say this is I had a Marble Madness. I mean, it's not true. I had a Road Blaster. I wish it was
84.
84.
Yeah. And
wow,
but this, I remember this was a conversion kit for that Atari board, whichever way. It was either System 1 or System 2. I don't remember which one. So, again, this is on the Amiga in '88.
Just to make sure, this is the one that was, like I said, developers are Atari and Tengen.
Tengen, that one, yeah. That was
okay, all right, yeah. 84.
So, this game, it came out, like I said, '88, OCS. Now, this one forgone the vector and went straight for just straight up graphics. Vector gone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
this is straight up raster.
They went for the Zaxxon look, right? Which is how would you describe this boat? I know.
Well, it says that it's known as the 3/4 isometric.
3/4, very fancy 3/4 isometric view. Another one that was released. This is pretty much all these are pretty much released on the same stuff. Amstrad, Atari ST, BBC Micro, C64, ZX Spectrum. So. In this game, you again, this is a game that has multiple levels. In the first one, I guess I'm not sure if you're supposed to be Leia or Luke, but it's taken from the Dago. What's the name of this planet? Help me out here.
Endor.
Endor, the forest moon of Endor, and you ride your speeder through the woods, trying to avoid stormtroopers who also are on speeders. All right, speeders are like hovering motorcycles. Right? If you'll recall this scene in the movie, and we didn't even go into the fact of our cinematic visits on this one. By the time this came out, I was really into it. I couldn't wait to see it. I know I saw this one. I'm almost ever since I saw this one in St. Albans as well. And I remember liking it, but I remember thinking the best parts by far were the beginning where they sprang Han, which was awesome. Loved that. And the bit with Darth and Luke and the Emperor, right? The stuff on the forest moon of Endor seemed silly to me. And I remember as a kid being offended that these stupid teddy bears could fight the freaking stormtroopers and win. They were winning.
You weren't impressed with the speeder scenes on Endor?
I thought they looked cool, but I remember, and we talked about this earlier, I was like, why would you ever do this? This is a lot like the AT-ATs. It's like, can't you just fly over the trees to get there? No, you have to fly through them. To me, this was like if it's like shore leave for the stormtroopers. That's what it reminds. Like, hey guys, you've been fighting out in space. Take a couple weeks, get you a motorbike, go out in the woods, have a good time.
The one thing in the movie that I always thought was a bit like perplexing is why is Lando wearing Han's clothes when he's flying Millennium Falcon?
That was strange. He had the vest and everything.
Oh yeah,
that's the official Millennium Falcon outfit.
When you're captaining the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. So anyway, I liked the movie, but as the years went on, I liked it not as much. Then when I heard that the original script or whatever said that was going to be a Wookiee plane, I was really put off because that
would have been much
and
better.
then I saw the Christmas special. And so I thought, well, maybe they did the right thing. That's the first time I was like, okay, we don't need a planet full of these Wookiees. We don't need that. So, but anyway, so the game, in the first level, you fly through the woods on this motorcycle or hover, and along the way, Ewoks, which are the little teddy bear guys in the movie, they have some traps set up, and if you lure your pursuers into them, the Ewoks will kind of help you out. You could bang the other guys' bikes off the screen and blow them up. You can bang them into trees and blow them up. What do you think?
Well, it's very difficult.
Yes.
The controls were pretty twitchy, and you're moving at a pretty good clip. And there's no second chances, just like on a real real land speeder speeder bike. If you crash, it's all over. That said, I don't hate it. I feel like you could get good at it if you practiced at it. It didn't seem unfair. And it did seem long, but maybe not too long. What really irked me is that when I finally made it past that stage and went on to the second stage, which you're in the Millennium Falcon, when you die on that stage, you have to go back and complete the speeder bike part again. I thought that was a little unfair.
Well, this is a lot like the first game, where you sort of like, when you go through the second time, they add a level, basically, to it. But so, yeah, in the arcade, I've never gotten past the tree level. I mean, in the arcade, this thing was like death. I could not get anywhere on this game.
Yeah, and if you're paying $0.25 a pop, then
this is of the three. Of course, I never saw Empire, but this one, I was just they had it. They were out there. I just didn't like it. So
what this reminds me of too, especially in the ATST level, is one of the Wings mini games where you have that same sort of perspective as you're flying up on the road.
Oh yeah, the strafing, parts. So, like Bo said, that once you complete the bike stage, and I should mention that the sound effects in the bike stage are amusing. Bo compared this to bump and jump with jump, and what I compared it to something which it was a far better comparison. But now I'm so feeble-minded that
Spy Hunter.
Spy Hunter. That's right. But there's this awesome noise when you hit these guys, and it's like straight out of a junkyard. It's like it's a pretty amusing noise. So I'll give them the noise. But when you complete this level, you get to go to the stupid Ewok tree village. I don't know if that place had a name.
It was called the Stupid Ewok Tree Village.
They did have that awesome song, but didn't have not featured. But remember the Yub Yub song?
Yep. I think they took that out of one of the later special editions.
I think I heard that. I was appalled. That was the only thing about the Ewok village that was any good. So anyway, you complete this level, then you kind of depending on what difficulty you go to. We'll just go ahead and do these in order. So the next level is you get to pilot I almost said an Atari ST. That's bad, isn't it? An ATST. And you're marching up to the woods, like mowing suckers down. And basically, that's not true. You're basically avoiding wood. As stupid as that sounds, and it is stupid.
It's a dumb level.
Apparently, the stormtroopers have been out and they've been chopping trees. Like lumberjacks. That's another thing they did on their R&R. They went out and chopped trees down. And so you'll occasionally see a pile of trees. Sometimes trees will roll at you that you can shoot.
Yeah.
A lot of trees. And then while you're doing this, it will flash to like a space scene where you've got, and I never got this far, so I had to watch many a video. And I was like, is this the way it's supposed to look? Is this the way it's supposed to look? And it's the Millennium Falcon and flanked by a couple of buddies, and they're making their run on the Death Star. Now, if you'll recall in the movie, Han and the boys were taking out the shield on Endor. So once the shield was down, then the Death Star would be vulnerable again, and you could go in and blow it up. So it's simultaneous action at its finest. So while you're lumbering up a lumberjack trail, your buddies are up there fighting these guys. And from what I saw, the fighting part's that part is pretty quick. It's just like a few seconds of fighting, and it goes back. Did you get that far when you played it?
Gosh, no, I only saw it on the playthrough.
And like I said, I never got anywhere near this in the arcade. So once you get your ATST to the bunker from the movie, and you see Han there, sorta, and he kind of waddles off and blows it up. Then you're good to go with the Millennium Falcon phase. And I did get to see Boat play the Millennium Falcon phase. That one I have played because, like I said, depending on what difficulty you pick. And the Millennium Falcon, again, you play Londo now. We've switched characters.
You have weird ways of pronouncing these names.
Londo?
Leah.
How do you pronounce it?
Lando and Leia, like they're supposed to be.
Yeah, whatever. You know what it is. I'm a big Babylon 5 fan, and there's a guy in there named Londo Malari. So it's Lando.
Is he played by Billy D. Williams?
No, he's not. He's played by Peter Jurassic, and he's a white guy with big, huge hair. But Billy D is smooth. Colt 45 smooth.
I saw him in person one time.
Really?
Yeah.
Where were you at?
In D.C.
Was he at a bar?
No, I wish. I was at a jazz concert, and he came out to give sort of the address before the concert
Did he get a big ovation?
Oh, yeah.
You know, my old boss said he ran into him at a club in down in Louisville.
Really?
And he was the King Dong.
Well,
they said he got up on stage and I was like, whoa! He's like, hey everyone, this is Billy D. You know this shit. He's smooth, man. He's freaking smooth. So anyway, you get to be Billy D. Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds good to me, man. So you go, and this level, I want to ask you about the first one. Look at the color of these houses.
Yeah, that's they could have done more in the Amiga version.
No kidding.
Sure.
Let me ask you, the color of the Death Star stage. That is a weird. Is it just me, or is that some weird color?
I was trying to think about what it reminded me of. It's some sort of like
It's just very strange.
Yeah, it's all red
blue
and blue.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's neon.
Yeah, it's not at all like.
Why can't we get the Millennium Falcon from the last game?
Yeah.
Get it this would be perfect color.
I guess what they wanted to do is really set the background apart so you could see where the Millennium Falcon was. But yeah, it's really strange. Really,
it is. It's very odd. But you fly the Millennium Falcon, and apparently the second Death Star is made solely of pipes. Because that's what you look like. You're flying over just wave after wave of these blue and red pipes.
Just nothing but pipes all the time. And they're in your way.
Yeah, they're in your way, and you're going in.
It's a Ninja Turtle level of Death Star.
Yeah.
Just sewer pipes.
Yeah,
sewer pipes.
And so you fly through these pipes, and some various close calls to get to the reactor. In this one, you have to blow up the reactor. Now, two things can happen at this point, as Boat demonstrated so deftly. Firstly, you can blow up the reactor, and then you have to leave, which I thought that was interesting. But then secondly, you can not blow up the reactor, and the Millennium Falcon just hits the back wall, and you die and start over on your motorbike. You go all the way back. So, and that's what Boat did. But but if you blow up the reactor, then you're much like the movie. Then the Millennium Falcon turns completely around, and you have to beat feet out of there, and the fire from the reactor is right on your hind, just like in the movie.
So again, this is the same thing that it seems like every week they've included a wonderful amount of content in this game, but they've made the game so hard that it's really difficult to see all of the content.
I'm glad that you had trouble because I felt like a jerk. I mean, I did get further in this than I did in the arcade, but I didn't get that far. Mm-hmm. And, this game didn't make the leap out of Vector very well. I mean, the thing is, this game, if just by looking at the game, you think to yourself, this is okay. I mean, it's the Amiga. It does this sort of gaming okay. Mm-hmm. It could do it better. But the controls, the way it plays, they're just tough. It's tough. Plus, it's got that other thing where stuff comes right up on you, and it's hard to not get killed because you're right near the, maybe at my old guy reaction time, I just can't cut it. But I had trouble on this screen. Like I said, the wood screen, I couldn't get past. I don't feel bad about that, though, because I had trouble in the arcade. But I did get further on this one than I used to. But still, same thing. And really, if you think about it, now that I'm looking at this screen is exactly like the the motorcycle screen, just with different pictures, basically.
Yeah, it's the same perspective and everything. So
I like how he just flips it in reverse when he hits that react. He just turns that sucker around.
Little known feature of it's a zero turn Millennium Falcon. Let's take a look at some of the comparisons here. This is probably one that has the most sort of difference in the graphics. The ZX Spectrum version obviously suffers from a lack of color. It's your yellow all the way through in both the speeder bike and the background. I didn't the BBC Micro version actually was pretty similar to the Amiga version. So instead we're looking at the Amstrad version, the CPC.
I'm looking at the ZX Spectrum version here. It's moving at a pace that's more comfortable for me.
Yeah.
And it's actually that doesn't look too bad. I mean, all things considered.
Yeah, and the actually the Amstrad version, I think in some ways it's a little bit more colorful than the Amiga version.
It looks like instead of the woods, you're driving through a rose garden.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of pastoralness to it.
Both versions are way slower though,
and
that's a fact.
I mean, that arcade version, when you look at how fast the arcade version's moving, I mean, it's moving faster than the Amiga version.
It's real. Sure. I mean, the arcade. I remember thinking, "Wow, this is an option for my machine," but I'm not getting this.
Yeah. And what's interesting is look at the arcade version of the Millennium Falcon level there. It looks totally like they could have easily just done that on the Amiga and not made it look so bad.
It looks kind of crummy. The arcade version, I'm not sure it looks better than the Amiga.
The colors are a little bit less garish, but the detail on the Falcon is not as good. It's further. The sprites are smaller.
Yeah.
But if you're a fan of I am like the TG16 Bonk, maybe this is right up your alley.
I will say this game is universally panned. I mean, almost everyone I've ever talked to about it don't like it.
Look at the red coming up on the.
I see it there. That looks like Doom. But of these three games,
nobody has
anything good to say about this. The reviews are not a ton of reviews, but you're looking at Amiga computing 63%. Although CU Amiga, which they're all over the map. That place, but they gave it a 78. They liked it pretty good. The one gave it a 66. And again, they're up and down. But overall, of the three games, this was my least favorite.
Me too. No doubt about it.
And the thing is, it could have been good. That's what irritated. The arcade version could have been good. I could see where they were going. But, I mean, this came well after, say, Zaxxon. Mm-hmm. When you're going for that same sort of thing, Zaxxon did it way better.
Well, Zaxxon had a 3D element where you were controlling your... you're controlling your altitude as well as your direction.
I mean, but you could have taken the altitude. That's one thing I didn't like about Zaxxon. But I mean, you needed that for the space stuff. Right? The Sparks in space, I hated it. But one thing I should mention, I did look all these up on eBay in case anyone's interested. Before we shut it down, the original game. Good luck. I found one in the U.S. I found three in the U.S. that are for sale. One was going for $25 shipped, wasn't over. One was going for $97 shipped, wasn't over. And one guy was asking $183 or best offer. That's a pretty wide range. And I looked up the history of this. The only ones I really saw were a German version sold for $25. And there was a someone just sold just the disc for $2. So that's one you might be able to find. Now, Empire, and by the way, we should mention that these were released as a compilation. It was basically the Star Wars Trilogy compilation, which I did not see. It was called the Star Wars Trilogy compilation. So there you go. Let me see here. So eBay on Empire, much rarer. I found one guy selling just the disc in the UK. $13. That was all I found. So I don't know what that means exactly.
Right.
So I'm assuming a lot of these would. I mean, I was wondering if they even sold these out of the compilation for a little while, but they must have.
Yeah.
And then finally,
because there's separate boxes for all of them.
Finally, the Jedi. There's a fellow in Canada selling one for $47 or best offer boxed, and that's the only one that was currently up that I saw at the time. This has sold recently for $22.
You should know that's 47 Canadian, so it's $34.
Yeah. It's well, you never know what the way our economy's going. It could be any money.
So, how much do you think a mint on card Jawa figure 77 Kenner would go for?
I know that one.
I don't know.
Okay,
Well,
Chad.
I used to know, I should say.
What's your guess? Because one just sold on here.
$6,000.
$250.
Really?
Yeah, this is 1977 Kenner Star Wars Java mint on 12 back card.
I thought you were talking about a vinyl Java.
Oh.
That one's probably about that much. Maybe.
Oh, wow.
You know, it's funny. When those action figures first came out, I remember this. I mean, very first batch, and I remember they had a deal that if you sent in so many proofs of purchase, I believe the first guy you could get was like Hammerhead, I think. Mm-hmm. And then I also remembered, I think it was
Snaggletooth.
There was another one. It may have been and there was another one. Remember the stupid boxy robot droid that was in this Jawa's speeder, the Jawa sandcrawler, had that kind of rough feet. It was a little box. I think it fell over in the bowels of that thing. That thing was another thing you could sit away for. And my buddies rented those, but I was there. I mean, I had a snow speeder. I thought those were cool, and I remember rigging up stuff in my yard to make it fly with the kite string and stuff. But I was never really a big action figure guy. I was more into like Battlestar Galactica guys. My buddy had this because they shot. They would shoot stuff. The Star Wars guys didn't shoot anything.
How did you rig up a snow speeder to fly with kite string?
Well, I hung some kite string in my backyard between some trees. And then I rigged hooks on the top of my snow speeder.
Oh,
just shoved it
I thought like you just attached some kite string and you just started like spinning it around.
Okay, so a vinyl cape Jawa, I said 6,000,
Mm-hmm.
6,400.
Wow.
People are insane.
Yeah.
Now that's for a graded one, but yeah.
Now, speaking of buying things that you don't need, if you are in the market for some new clothing, why not check out Everything Amiga's Amiga t-shirt store? If you scroll down to the Clothe Yourself link and click on Amiga tees, you can avail yourself of these lovely designs, such as the one Aaron is wearing tonight, the Amigas Are Scum t-shirt. Amigos Are Scum. You've also got our Staff and Supporters t-shirt, always popular with the Patreon supporters. And there's a bunch of other. We actually sold our first Guru Meditation shirt this morning.
I want one of those.
So, be sure and check those out. It's a way to support the show. You can also support the show by going over to patreon.com/AmigosPodcast and throwing a few bucks our way each month really helps us keep the lights on. So, in fact, why don't we thank our Patreon supporters right now? So this week, I don't have a clever song. So
I thought you would do it like to the Star Wars theme or something.
This week, I'm going to do it to the Star Wars theme.
That's how much thought gets put into
Dung! Duncan in the Styles, THT, Anthony Jarvis, Dreamcatcher, Adam Buzzard, John Marshall, Darren Coles, Neil Mansell, Barracuda, Alan Kebab, David McCrandles, Gary Hucker, Will Williams, Ravi, Abbott, Kim Tommy Humberstad, Josh Nan, Jason Warnes, Lane Eric Nelson, Graham W. Vebke, Paul Harrington, Rob O'Hara, Lauren Giroux, Jonas Rulo, Kilburn Barman, Tips from the Crypt, Adam Bradley, Chris Folds, Daniel Bingston, O'Brien's Retro and Vintage, Chad Halstead, and Brent Dottie.
That's pretty good.
Thank
Except
you.
that fanfare, you shoved a lot into that, didn't you?
We gotta have the
Good
fanfare.
God.
I'd also like to thank everybody hanging out with us on YouTube Gaming right now.